Hi. Christianity in the Social Crisis, Walter Rauschenbusch, page 308. The subhead is The Hostile Ethics of Commercialism. Human nature is the raw material for the Christian character. The Spirit of Christ, working in the human spirit, is to elevate the aims and ennoble the motives and intensify the affections. This process is never complete. The Christian is always but in the making. In the same way, human society is the raw material for Christian society. The Spirit of Christ is to hallow all the natural relations of men and give them a divine significance and value. This process, too, is never complete. The kingdom of God is always but coming. The situation is changed when the individual presents not only the obstacles of raw human nature, a will sluggish to good, a preference for pleasure rather than duty, and the clogging influence of evil habits, but a spirit and principles consciously hostile to the influence of Christianity, and sets defiant pride and selfishness against the gentleness and unselfishness urged by the Spirit of Jesus. In the same way, the situation is changed when the social relations are dominated by a principle essentially hostile to the social conceptions of Christ. Then the condition is not that of a stubborn raw material yielding slowly to the higher fashioning force, but of two antagonistic spirits grappling for the mastery. The more such a hostile principle dominates secular society, the more difficult will be the task of the Church when it tries to bring the Christ spirit to victorious ascendancy. Christianity bases all human relations on love, which is the equalizing and society-making impulse. The Golden Rule makes the swift instincts of self-preservation a rule by which we are to divine what we owe to our neighbor. Anything incompatible with love would stand indicted. Christ's way to greatness is through preeminent social service. Self-development is desirable because it helps us to serve the better. So far as the influence of the Christian spirit goes, it bows the egoism of the individual to the service of the community. It bids a man live his life for the kingdom of God. In urging the social duty of love, Christianity encounters the natural selfishness of human nature. But this is not a hostile force. It is the instinct of self-preservation, without which no child would survive. In a well-trained child, the frank egoism of the baby is steadily modified by a growing sense of duty and of solidarity with the family and the little social group in which it moves. With the change of adolescence comes a powerful instinct of self-devotion to society. If the influence of Christianity accompanies the child during this development and comes to conscious adoption in the adolescent period, it gives an immense reinforcement to the moralizing influence of the family and the school, and creates a character ready for real social life and service. If the larger human society into which the young man or woman then enters were adapted to continue the social training given in the family and the school, if the industrial life which molds the adult set tasks for If the industrial life which molds the adult set tasks for conscious social service and inspired all workers with the sense of moral solidarity, social life would be so closely akin to the Christian conception that the task of Christianity would be easy and comparative success would be within reach. Instead of that, the young adult, in the most plastic time of his development, is immersed in an industrial life which largely tends to counteract and neutralize Christian teaching and training. Competitive industry and commerce are based on selfishness as the dominant instinct and duty, just as Christianity is based on love. It will outbuy and outsell its neighbor if it can. It tries to take his trade and grasp all visible sources of income in its own hand. The rule of trade, to buy in the cheapest market and sell in the dearest, simply means that a man must give as little to the other man and get as much from him as possible. This rule makes even honest competitive trade, to say nothing of the immense volume of more or less dishonest and rapacious trade, antagonistic to Christian principles. The law of Christ, wherever it finds expression, reverses the law of trade. It bids us demand little for ourselves and give much service. A mother does not try to make as rich a living as possible and to give a minimum of service to her children. It would be a sorry teacher who would lie awake thinking how he could corner the market in education and give his students as small a chunk of information as possible from the pedagogic ice wagon. The relation between a minister and a church is Christian only when the church pays him as well as it can afford to do, and he gives as wholehearted and complete service as he can get out of himself. There are some professions and some social relations which are in the main dominated by the Christian conceptions of solidarity and service, and they are the only ones that arouse our enthusiasm or win our love. Industry and commerce are not in that class. More next time on Rauschenbusch's faith. We should have to say hostility towards the trend that he saw in American economics and society in 1907. Put in a link to a video we did on the Apostle James's only epistle. What is true religion according to the Apostle James? What is the royal law by which he says all life should be run? Nobody speaks more forcefully about this than James, except of course for his brother.